When you have a team of people that are sitting face to face and they're all putting in energy, that thing can get moved forward a lot faster than if you yourself are solo trying to carry the weight of like 9 team members. That sounds absolutely horrible. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lead Volunteers podcast. My name is Josh Denhart. Grateful that you're here. Grateful that you've joined us. Hey, we always try to have thought-provoking conversations, and today is not going to disappoint. Be prepared though. We're gonna push a little bit. I think we're gonna end in a great place, but I'm gonna challenge some conventional wisdom and some conventional thinking, and I'm excited. I'm excited to do that. I think that's something that I would hope that you come to expect, that it's not just cookie cutter, basic, standard 101. We want to actually push the envelope. Well, again, thank you for joining us on the Lead Volunteers podcast. Don't forget, it's not just audio. We also have a wonderful and ever-growing YouTube channel. If you want to see our faces, if you want to hear us talk, if you want to see some graphics that kind of go with and provide a little bit more of a mental schemata from a visual standpoint, we're there for you. Well, again, super grateful, but guess what? I got my friend Bill. Bill is back with us. Bill Van Kirk, how you doing?
Good. I'm super excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, I think this one is ripe for a conversation. And today we're talking about the idea of ownership and influence. And I think it's really, really, really important. I don't think that people succeed. I don't think that they feel like they're fully in when they are dictated to every single thing that's going to happen, and they're just nothing but a little worker bee or a worker ant that's just grinding out the details. I want us all to come in to a ministry conversation when it comes to leading volunteers, making the assumption that these people are smart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there are some leaders who actually just naturally lead this way, where they see themselves as the grand poobah of their ministry.
Right.
And so what they do is they're so highly directive that it almost feels as those who are working in the ministry are like drones in this
Bingo.
Little ant colony, just doing what the key leader is wanting them to do. And that may seem like a really efficient way to actually lead a ministry. But what we're talking about today is that's going to actually really harm your ministry in the long run.
It really will. And I love what you're saying, because there's this tension, and that's what we opened with, where it's like, okay, we're going to challenge you on this. And by the way, the person who's probably the most challenged is me, because guess what? Last I looked, I'm the one that's waking up at 3 a.m. thinking about the ministry, not them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You naturally, as the ministry leader, are going to have the most ownership. But I think the key is to start to think about how you can give some of that ownership away.
Exactly. In one of the sayings that we have in the Lead Volunteers ecosystem, in the kind of the lead ministry, kind of suite of resources, is this: those who have say are those who are going to stay. If you want them to stay, give them say. In other words, People are far more likely to put their heart behind it when they feel that their own voice is directly shaping the future of the ministry.
Yeah, and it's actually not just their voice, but they should even kind of switch language to I'm helping the church to this is our church. This is our program.
Preach.
And they go in not just I have influence, but I'm part of this. I own part of this. And of course, that's how God actually set it up, isn't
100%.
it? He wants the body of Christ to work together. Now, there is leadership, and there are people who are volunteers. There's a distinction there. But God wants us to all work together and to own our building up of the body of Christ together.
Big time. Now, the interesting thing is that, early on, and this wasn't just like an attempt at self-deprecation, or this wasn't an attempt at self or like false humility. But in all seriousness, when I first started at the ministry, they kept calling me the boss. And I was like, no, listen, I'm not as comfortable with you saying that. And it's not because it's some kind of a false humility. Rather, what it is that we are, and I said this all the time, we are co-equals in Christ, but we just happen to have different seats on the bus. And my seat actually happens to be the one that can carry something forward to the senior leaders to do this, that, or the other. That's actually one of my roles. But your voice carries just as much weight as mine does inside of this team. And I think that is a very important piece.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would totally agree with that. And it's kind of this view of like, you're leading by an inch and not a mile, you know,
So,
you don't want to be.
Help me with that. I like this, but I want you to go deeper with it. Tell me what you're saying there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're leading by a mile, it means you're so far out in front of everyone that you have to have everyone in the organization see you as the main leader, and none of us can rise to that level. But if you're leading by an inch, it is, hey, within the structure of the church, I've been delegated just a little bit more authority because God is calling me to lead this ministry forward, but you're right there with me. Like you are just right there with me, and I'm steering, but you're right there with me, helping own this ministry and move it forward the way that God wants it moved forward.
And I am okay. I love this. Okay. So for instance, today, you and me and two people that are on this team, and they are coaches for me, and they're creating content with me. We all got together. I literally happened to be an inch in front of you guys, and I had given thought prior to our meeting, but it was pretty much an open game. This wasn't me saying, okay, this is exactly how this is going to go. Now you go do this and you go do that. It was, this is very amorphic at this point. Help us put your fingerprints on this, help stamp it and shape it. That's where I think ministry gets beautiful for several reasons. Number one, you want them to stay. Great. You're going to give them say. But let me throw something else out there. I am not the smartest person in the room. And guess what, leader, podcast listener? You're not the smartest person in the room. You may think about this more than everybody else, but yours is not the only perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I resonated with you that as soon as you said it, is we are so much better in team. Yes. And that includes paid staff, but also your volunteers and your key ministry leaders. If you can pull together a team where you're leading by an inch, like we're talking about, and you can actually let them speak into the ministry, it's just going to be so much better overall than you trying to be the solo key leader who everyone has to look to as the only one who knows anything in the ministry.
Right. Okay. So if there's a lot of people who listen to this who are in the children's ministry space, but also there's just people who have been in Christianity for a very long time. There's a guy named Phil Vischer who created VeggieTales, right? And I heard the most humbling story that he shared at a keynote address. And it was so painful because he made the assumption that he had to be the one who was going to go up on the mountaintop, and he alone could, and he said, it wasn't because I didn't care about other people. It's just that I had a mental framework that I was the peak of the organization, so therefore I was the only one who could think of things. And I'll tell you what, man. And anybody who's ever served in any kind of capacity with me, bro, I lead in community. I don't lead in isolation. Like, for instance, Bill, when I was a high school chemistry teacher, I had to get a degree in chemistry. Mm-hmm. And so in college, I would go seek out people and be like, okay, who wants to be on the study group? Why? Because I learn socially. And so you said it earlier, that some people have this natural proclivity toward leading in community. I definitely have that. I don't have fear. Now, we're going to talk in a little bit about leaders who truly have this paranoia. And let me tell you, it's going to destroy you. Well, here's the fun part. We've been talking about this. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, which I would encourage you to subscribe, jump on YouTube and check out what we're doing on that page. We usually come up with, three big things. Let's define it, let's develop this, and then let's do it. So from a definition standpoint, Bill, I think we're almost there. I think we kind of already understand this. We have defined it, but it's the idea of ownership and influence, giving somebody else the ability to help steer the ship based on how they view the world and how they view the ministry. Help us with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those pieces where it's not just everyone's riding on the bus with you. Like there's this. Okay, I got a good picture illustration. There's this thing in Green Bay called the Foxy Peddler. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Okay, it's called the Foxy Peddler. Okay, and the way that this thing works is everyone gets on this machine and it does not move forward unless everyone's pedaling.
Okay.
Okay.
So is
So
this like
they
this?
are
Like,
actually powering it.
is this like I've seen this in one other place where it was almost like a bar where people were like sitting around and people were pedaling. They're facing each other like at a table and they're pedaling, and the gear structure actually converts that into the same forward momentum. Is that what this is?
That's exactly what it is. Yep. And so honestly, if people stop pedaling, the whole thing will stop and they can't continue on to their next destination.
This
And
is
so they're sitting there the whole time pedaling together. And that's a picture of how your leadership should work. Now, there's going to be somebody in this Foxy Peddler, right, who's steering. Like you have to have somebody who is actually moving the little steering stick so that you're not crashing into other cars and everything. But everyone on that team is working and everyone is owning the forward momentum of that project. And that's what needs to happen in ministry. And that's this picture of ownership and influence. You need to find people to be your peddlers, to be the ones driving the engine towards moving your ministry forward.
I completely love this. Now, because I'm crazy and because we're doing this live and recording this, I am doing my absolute best to grab a picture right now. So I literally just found a picture and I'm pasting it as we speak. So I found one of those crazy things. Am I right? Quick question, Bill, have you ever ridden on one of these?
I have never actually ridden on one of those, but I've always been super interested in it. Our church is in a downtown context, and so there's one that's downtown Green Bay all of the time. And so every time I'm going home from work, I look out, I'm like, that thing looks so interesting. I just want to know more about it. It's like being on a giant canoe where everyone has to paddle,
right. Okay, here it is. Here's the picture. I got it for you right here. There it is. Now it's a little bit blurry because that's what it is. It's like everybody's sitting directly across. It's like a dining room table. This is the image. I've got goosebumps. This is the image that I want people to have. I literally could get emotional about this. This says it all. These people are sitting at a table across from one another. They can have conversations, but the collective effort moves the thing forward, as opposed to the person who has all of these people and the weight of these people, and that person is the only one, and he's pulling a cart with them on there. That is so inefficient.
So inefficient, and you'd go much slower if one person was doing all the work.
So if this is going to incentivize people to go to YouTube, and I'm really glad that we don't have anybody producing the show. I'm producing it right now in front of us. Am I right? But to be able to go out there and find this stuff, this is it. So it's a dining room table, which in my opinion connotates community.
Mm-hmm.
A dining room table, and you're sitting across from one another. And in this case, these wonderful people, I think they're sharing club soda. No, they're drinking alcohol. I love them. But what I'm saying is they're having this little party. And ministry for me is a party. It's my life. I love it. If it's not fun, I'm out. And so these people are having community together, and they're all pedaling, they're all putting an effort, and their collective effort moves the thing forward. I love this. The Foxy, oh my word. What's it called? The Foxy
Peddler.
The Foxy Peddler. Well, that's open. Well, here's the deal. I've had a lot of people over the years, Bill, and I took great offense, if I could be honest with you, at what they were saying. They were saying, oh, you know what? I mean, come on. I got an open door policy. I don't need to solicit opinions from other people. If somebody has an idea, they know they can come to me. Now, Bill, what's your take on that?
Well, I think what you're doing there is, I think you'll get some opinions, but you're actually filtering sometimes for the loudest person in your ministry. You're filtering out all the people who are maybe more thoughtful, more reserved, more contemplative,
more respectful,
more respectful.
And
you're
by the way,
saying,
I'm not saying that somebody coming forward that doesn't all of a sudden say that they're disrespectful. But the thing is that there are people who they have a far higher view of, or they have a particular view of leadership, to where marching into somebody's office and telling them how it could be different, that is like borderline disrespect because of their personality or their upbringing.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Like just polite. Some people who are like, they believe it's polite to not just offer their opinion, like now,
Right.
if you poll someone from like a certain part of the country, like a New Yorker or something, they might come into your office and tell you what they think.
That's right. But if all of a sudden it's
those stereotypes. Yeah.
But if it's a hardcore Midwest nice.
Yeah. If it's Midwest nice, they're going to be their feedback for your open door policy is going to probably only be positive anyway. So
that's right. And so when these people say this phrase to me, oh, well, I've had people say this in a breakout nationally where they're like, oh, I got this covered. I got an open door policy. And so in this one moment of wisdom and a little bit of boldness, I said to the person, hey, how many people are actually walking through your door? And he goes, well, not that many. I said, that should give you an indication that your strategy is failing. And I said, how about this? How about you get your bottom off of your chair and walk right out that very open door and go find people and ask and solicit their opinion. Here's what I say. Hey, what are we missing here? What is wrong with what we're doing? In other words, what could we do better? And this person was, I don't want to say snapped, but they all of a sudden were like, hey, touche, good word. And so get your buns out and go ask people. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a good way to do it. I mean, it's one of those things where that actually is an opportunity for you to honor somebody as a leader, where you go to them and you say, hey, you know what? I know you've been in this ministry. I know that you have given some great advice and great contribution to what we're doing here. I know you're bought in. And so I'm coming specifically to you, and I want to hear, what are we missing as a ministry? What are some of the issues that you see? Like, if you could change one thing about this ministry, what would it be? And you'll be amazed at the depth that you will get when you solicit people that way, when you go to them and you honor them with that ask.
100%. Now, there's two pieces to this. The last thing we want is when a leader, they're like, okay, I'm going to try what Bill just said. And they go and they ask somebody. And then when somebody gives them feedback and then they like do the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. And then you dismantle everything that they've shared because you know better. And there's a reason why we're not doing that. And you get super aggressive and you're like leaning in on them. And they're like, okay, I'm never doing that again. When they ask me next time, I'm going to say, everything's great. And so you have to be a leader, like keep your mouth closed. And by the way, here's another piece of advice. What you're wanting is two things. You're wanting first, their knee-jerk reaction, the thing that when you see body language and you're like, no, tell me that one, the one that you just thought of. You think you don't want to tell me, that's the one I want to hear. And they're like, yes, well, and then that's the one that I want. And second, I want to check their body language when they say something that I think is a cover, right? And so then I want to go, okay, hey, that's totally good. I really appreciate that. And I want to let you know if there's ever anything else, like I am literally open. So the way that I receive their feedback is going to be in keeping with whether they give me feedback ever again in the future.
That is so spot on. I mean, you have to, before asking, you have to commit to not being defensive. Because I think that's the biggest thing that leaders do is, hey, we're going to solicit feedback. Let's have a listening session where we listen to everyone's complaints. And then they spend the whole time trying to dispel all the complaints that everyone brought up. And you didn't actually accomplish anything. It was just, you started a fight essentially.
Oh, and it's all because of your own personal lack of humility.
Right. And I think insecurity as well. Because I think when you invite somebody to critique your ministry, it's like, if you're ministry leaders, man, that's your baby, right? And you don't want to hear how bad your baby's doing or how your baby doesn't look good, right?
That's right. How ugly your baby is. Nobody wants.
Absolutely.
But here's the funny thing is if you can just understand that people truly love this thing. They are here because they're laying up treasure in heaven. They really do care. This is not a job. They're doing this of their own free volition. And you have to come in with the idea, the assumption that they are smart. Now, let me speak to that just for a minute. Now, I have a degree in a ton of degrees in education and all of these things. And here's what I want to say. Adult learning theory is very different than adolescent learning theory and even like child or children's learning theory. Adult learning theory, it assumes prior knowledge. It assumes that they're already smart. And so it takes a little bit more savvy to be educating adults because they already have a whole bunch of life experience, and it's within the context of that life experience that they're smart, and I want to draw that from them. So, but if you come in, like there's different voices, Bill. There's a voice when you're teaching, it's kind of more didactic. It's like this. There's a coaching thing where you're talking with your finger, maybe like this or like this. If you're a politician, you're talking with your finger in. My point is there's different speaking styles. But when it comes to adult learning theory, making the assumption that they're smart and that the assumption that they have something to offer, that's the posture that we want to come in with.
Oh yeah, and people like whether you know it or not, you are going to communicate with your body language,
guaranteed,
what you really think about them. And if you go in saying to yourself, "Hey, I'm going to assume that this person is smart and that they know something and then that they have something to offer," because they really do.
They do.
They're going to sense that, and they're going to be more open to sharing with you what they truly think about the ministry and the feedback you're asking for.
So this open door policy, I get it. I have an open door policy too, but I walk my own self out of that open door and I solicit feedback. And in conclusion on this part, like toughen your skin a little bit. They're not coming at you. You're also making the assumption that these people have the best in mind. Now, this leads me to, I almost teed my own self up. This is a very important concept for me. I call it weighing opinions, don't count them. Weigh, W-E-I-G-H, place someone's, I place, like certain opinions have a weighted value. I don't count opinions. This is not a democracy where I'm like, oh, this many people have this opinion, therefore we're going to go that direction. There's weighted opinions. Now, does this at first make sense to you, Bill?
Yeah. Okay. So tell me more about this because I'm super interested in what you mean by that. So weigh opinions, but don't count them. Tell me more. Yeah.
I would say truly that not all opinions are created equal. Now, again, I told you this was going to be a little bit edgy. And I if anybody out there is kind of like, ooh, give me a little bit of room on this, because I do believe that you already buy in and believe what I'm saying. But it's a little bit edgy. I don't think that all opinions are created equal. And here is a grid, Bill, when people are coming to me, I do this really quick assessment when they're giving me an opinion. By the way, let's say that I'm not soliciting opinions. This is somebody who comes directly to me and without me asking them anything. I'm going to run them through a grid or a filter. I'll get to those four T's in a minute. But also, when I am walking out of my door to solicit opinions, not all opinions are created equal. And I'm looking for somebody who has all four of these T's. Here we go. The first T, by the way, weigh opinions, don't count them. The first T is, what's their tenure? How long have they been with you? Have they been a part of this ministry for the last 11 years? That means that they've seen a whole bunch of things come, a whole bunch of things go. They know personalities, they know people, they know the culture. They also know the climate of your church. There's a big difference between culture and climate. We'll talk about that sometime. They have tenure. They've been there a long time. I'm going to listen to them with a far greater weighted value. The next one, track record. Are they a flake? I mean, are they flaky? Are they faithful in little? Therefore, I know they'll be faithful in much. I get it that they've been around for a long time, but another benchmark or another gate that I'm going to expect them to pass is like, what's your track record? Are you generally a hater and you're wanting to like beat everything down? Are you a Debbie Downer and every idea has a problem. Okay, I'm going to weigh that differently. Okay, another T is teachability. This is huge. I think this is a bold statement, but I think teachability is the single greatest trait in Christianity. You might be like, well, what about love? Well, we have to learn how to love. And if you're not teachable, we've got serious problems. So is this person teachable, or do they have a headstrong? They think that they know everything, and so on. I'm gonna have a harder time weighing that opinion favorably. Stick with me. The last one is tone. I mean, if it's a really great idea, but they're coming at me with 4 fingers and they're actually pounding my chest, and it's like, and they're hitting my chest. Not a fan. I'm not going to receive that as well. Okay, so does this make more sense to you, Bill, when I talk about weigh opinions, don't count them?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I was actually thinking about this when we were talking about soliciting this advice, because we talked actually a lot about the leader side of things and how your heart is supposed to be that way. But when you flip it to the volunteer side, as a leader, you have to know that when you solicit advice, there is some advice that you're going to have to say, that's that person's issue, not the ministry's issue, because you're going to run into a lot of those. And I think this is a great grid for determining that.
Yeah.
Like asking kind of where they're coming from, where all of those things that you put, tenure, track record, teachability, tone, like that's a great grid to pull them through.
Yes. Now, we're not going down this road on this particular podcast. However, this also speaks to when I want to speak up to my senior leaders and say, hey, listen, I think we should go a different direction. How long have I been at this church? Like, is this I've been here for 4 months on staff. Okay, maybe I've been here for 11 years, but I'm really common for dropping balls and other people cleaning up my messes. I don't have a good track record. Well, this speaks to the entire course that I have called Lead Up. We'll talk about that at another time. But my point is that how long you been there? How well have you done when you've been given a ball? Do you have a teachable spirit and tone? Very, very, very important. Now, this also leads to this okay, right here, I don't even know if I could find a sound effect that would be good here. I don't even know, dude. I need to find something bad, right? Here we go. Maybe, I don't know. No, that's not good enough. This is a lame reason warning, right? I tried. But I'm going to call this a lame reason warning. There's years ago that I had a guy who was my boss. And I just came into the ministry. I've been a teacher for a number of years. I've been serving at this church prolifically for a long time. So I did know a lot about the church. But now he was my boss, and that's fine. And I said, within the first month, I said, I really want to send out an aggressive survey. And he stood up in a meeting. And he literally had this visceral reaction, and he said, you're not sending out anything. And I was like, oh, wow, what do we got going here? He said, we don't send surveys. And I said, why is that? And he said, because then people are going to think that you're now on the hook to do what they just told you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Just because they give a survey doesn't mean that I'm committing to anything they're saying. He goes, well, that's what people think. And I was like, well, I think that you are thinking about this wrong. You know what I mean? Now, it took me a number of years because, listen, I was new. I submitted to the idea that he knew more than I did. I took him at his word. But over time, I began to change my perspective. Now, hear me out. He said, don't survey them. They will expect you to do what they say. Well, here's the thing. Over time, Bill, I began to create a repository of goodwill with the people that I was leading. Over time, I earned the right to be heard. And so when I was sending out a survey, I had gained enough credibility that they knew that I was a malleable enough guy in a good way that I would take what they would say, maybe not take it. You see where I'm going with this? It comes down to relationship. But apparently this leader had been burned historically. I would suppose his visceral reaction tended to make me think that he had such a bad experience that he didn't want to ask anybody what their opinions were through a survey, because then they would expect that those things should be done. Okay, any thoughts on this, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I could see somebody getting burned with a survey if you don't have relational buy-in,
Right.
and if the organization is dysfunctional already, and there's like more landmines and problems than you could count, and then you send out a survey and then nothing changes, you're putting yourself in a bad position if you do that. But like you said, Josh, like if you've built that goodwill,
Yeah.
and your people know that you respond to feedback already, then getting feedback should not be something that's a threat to you. It should be something that you're welcoming, and it should be something that's a regular part of your ministry.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And so, for what it's worth, I mean, there's a lot of people who are listening to the podcast who are a part of the Lead Ministry membership. There are some who have, contemplated or whatever. But what I want to point out, I think, for people out there is in the retain module. So, right, we have like inside of Lead Volunteers, we have recruit, train, retain, multiply. The retain course that we have, there is a beautiful 10-question survey that is sent out. In the funny thing is that I have you send it out in a Google form, which then you can look at what's called a histogram. Now, a histogram is like a line graph. And we need to have a conversation about what feedback I received and how that caused me to change. And so here's the thing. I truly believe that sending something out with credibility, but it is huge. But if you are a member of Lead Volunteers, go to the Retain course, and it's the second lesson, and it's called Get Data. And the questions are worded in such a way that it's going to provide a wealth of really, really, really powerful information. So didn't plan on sharing that, but I think that that's a good one. Okay, so now earlier we had talked about this, Bill, and I want you to take this one away. We talked about being a street cleaner versus being a roadblock. There's a big difference there.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. Yeah. And what we were talking about it was actually in relation to a meeting that we had. And I said, hey, we have some ideas on the table, but I want to bring up some maybe obstacles that might get in the way that we should actually talk about before we move forward.
Yes.
And my point was, hey, I want everyone to know that when I bring these things up, the reason I'm bringing them up is actually not to slow you down or to stop you from moving forward or to discourage you or to move you away from the vision that God's given you. I actually want to anticipate the problems ahead of time and remove them so that your argument, I'm not poking holes in it, I'm hardening your argument.
Oh, I love that.
So that as you move forward, we're all on the same page and we've already addressed the issues. Now that's different than somebody who comes in and every single meeting they say to you, this is why this won't work, right? Or they're negative, or they're like the perpetual Eeyore who's always dragging down your next idea. You got to actually strategically move those people so that they're not always pulling down on all of your thoughts for moving forward.
And let me go so far as to say, when I figure out who those people are, I don't box them out because they're a part of the kingdom and their opinions matter and I want them to be on the team, but I'm not going to utilize them for this particular type of team work.
Absolutely. And a lot of times those are the people who are so valuable. I'm not discounting them at all. They are so valuable, but when they're valuable is actually after the vision has been cast and the decisions have been made. And what I mean by that is a lot of time people with that gift mix, where they see all the problems, those are the best people to come alongside you when you've already decided direction and say, hey, I see what you're doing. I know we're moving forward. And now I'm going to mop up all the things that you didn't think about. I'm going to take care of all those little details and just really make sure that your vision works. It
comes down to commitment. Okay. So, what is it? Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Here's the funny thing is that when somebody is committed to the whole thing, I don't think that they are a roadblock. I actually perceive what they're bringing as future betterment. They're a street cleaner, not a roadblock. So powerful. But see, but it comes down to their commitments. Like today in our meeting that we had, I have no question that you are beyond fully committed to what's going on. So therefore, I perceive your pushback on this thing or that thing as really like, this is, as you said, hardening the vision, not seeking to put, bullet holes through it so that it will sink. There's a big difference between a sinker and somebody who's strengthening. That people are, There's some people out there who are literally wanting to torpedo this. And I got to be honest with you, those are people whose opinions I don't go to them at the early stages. I'll put it this way. By the way, if my wife listens to this one, we're fine. Okay. But I am the gas and she is the brakes. But I'll tell you the truth. I don't go to her when I'm in dreaming mode. And that's not because I don't love and celebrate and appreciate her. I have learned that my best use of her gift set is after she actually forces me to comb through the idea and have as much of it completely solved before it ever finds the light of day to be in front of her. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can see how it's actually amazing. I mean, it should cause us to worship God because as he's created us in his image and gifted each one of us, he molds us and shapes us so that we work together and it brings more strength than just alone. Imagine exactly if you were the accelerator and there was no brakes, Josh.
Serious problems.
You need the brakes.
serious problems. So we, my wife and I have been for we're very pro counseling, right? And so whether we've got a great marriage or we got a challenge, we go to counseling. We love that. We think it's great. We love our counselor. And just recently, our counselor reminded us, you two are really good for each other, right? And so then we need to view our teammates in our ministry teams. However, I do think with this whole roadblocks and street cleaner thing, certain people's propensity toward being a Debbie Downer, that can be leveraged for good. I just don't want to talk to them early in the vision casting. Does that make sense?
That is so wise. And I just want to talk to any leader who's in that position. If you feel like in the ideation phase of your vision moving forward, you have somebody in a seat that is speaking into that and you feel like you can't move forward, I just give you permission right now to find a way early on in the process to just dream first and then bring them in later on in that process, because I've been in that position. So.
And the thing is, this comes down to who are we as leaders? I am a vision-driven leader, but I also do have a strong sense of the nuts and bolts and how this moves forward. I get that. But those purely vision people who don't have strategic gifts and all they think about is this wide-eyed idea, those people are going to almost hate somebody who comes in with any level of practicality. By the way, the practicality is super important, just not at that first meeting.
Right. Absolutely.
So this has been a fantastic conversation. And so I would say, as part of the closer of what we're talking about, I think it comes down to where do we start, right? We're ready to do this. Somebody's like, okay. I need to break out of my room. I need to go through that open door and go find somebody to talk to. I have some thoughts about this, but I want to pitch it to you, Bill. What do you think would be like a great place to start with this? Because let's get real. There's somebody out there who's currently breaking out in hives when they're leaving the theory idea and they're like, okay, I'm going to go ask somebody what we're missing as a team. That sounds very risky. Okay, where should we start?
Yeah, I mean, this piece is, start small, okay? And so if you're not used to getting this type of feedback, it does take a while in ministry to kind of build up a thick skin, because sometimes people tell you things that hurt. Even if they're true, they still hurt, and it's hard for your ministry. And so start really small. Pick somebody on your team who you already trust, has lots of tenure, has all those T's that we talked about, and just ask them, hey, is there one thing in our ministry that you think is missing? Or you could ask them this, hey, share with me one thing that's working super well, and then share with me one thing that needs to change. And just keep it that simple. And that way you get some positive feedback along with something that you actually probably need to work on as a ministry leader.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I would say, okay, we talked about we weigh opinions, we don't count them. Find somebody, if you're new to this, who's already a raving fan of you, and they are a raving fan of the ministry, because you already know they're fully bought in. They got your back. They are already wind to your sails. And so then when you approach them and you say, hey, what do you think is going really well? By the way, I had a senior leader who was not open to any kind of negative feedback. He made everybody, you have to lead with the positive, right? And so that's fine. I get that. So it's helpful when we don't know what we're doing. We don't really know how to do this very well, to get somebody to lead with the positive. That kind of warms us up. Everything's fine. And then you say, what's one minor course correction, right? Just ask them something small. Now, this is a parenting moment that I'm going to share. My son, he ended up quitting his job a bit ago. And the funny thing is that I knew it was coming. And of course, I don't want my son to quit his job. Come on, I want you to whatever, right? So he came to me and said, well, I quit my job. And so I had a great parenting moment, pat myself on the back. I said, oh, wow. Okay. How do you feel about that? Okay. So that was a good parenting move, instead of going, what are you talking about? And so in the same way, put on the good parenting hat, knowing that somebody's going to give you feedback that you might go, well, that kind of stepped on my left pinky toe because I worked really hard at that. Just get used to the idea. Thank you. I really appreciate that you shared that. Your opinion is very helpful. And then walk off, go to the bathroom, cry a little bit, and then wipe your tears off and collect yourself. I think what you said though, Bill, start small. Start small. Well, at the end of the day, I think an important piece is we need people's feedback. I have but one perspective. If there's a 5,000 puzzle piece, I am but one puzzle piece. I am not the entirety. I might be a corner piece that defines two sides, but brother, sister, you're just one person. And the best thing you can do is lead in community. Man, this was a fun convo here, Bill.
Yeah, it was.
I feel super inspired. And normally, we went longer than normal because it was just kind of happening. So very good. Now, remind me one more time, what's the name of that crazy device that these people sit on?
It's called the Foxy Peddler.
The Foxy Peddler. I want to go up and find that if I can, because I want to give people a visual one more time. I think the Foxy Peddler, I think that's super huge. There it is right there. The Foxy Peddler. Yep. May we remember as we close this podcast, when you have a team of people that are sitting face to face and they're all putting in energy, that thing can get moved forward a lot faster than if you yourself are solo trying to carry the weight of 9 team members. That sounds absolutely horrible. Well, gang, this has been a fun conversation. This has been, I kind of don't want it to end. Well, podcast gang, here's what I want from you. What I want is for you to check out the YouTube channel. I would love for you to do us a favor. If this was of any value to you, just make a comment on the podcast place that you're listening. And here's why. Because it helps us. It helps us to get the word out that this exists. And we would love for you to partner with us in helping people to get the word out. For the other people can find out these good things that you're learning as well. Gang, that's it. From Bill and Josh, we are grateful that you're here, and we will catch you guys on the next one.